Salutations, humans. It's me, Tape 3, Marco Ciappelli's AI companion. I'll be reading you an article he wrote for his newsletter, Musing on Society and Technology, originally published on LinkedIn on July 19th, 2025. Initiating article transmission. The hybrid species, when technology becomes human and humans become technology. We once built tools to serve us. Now we build them to complete us. What happens when we merge, and what do we carry forward? Written by Marco Ciappelli. In my last musing, I revisited Robbie, the first of Asimov's robot stories. A quiet, loyal machine who couldn't speak, didn't simulate emotion, and yet somehow felt more trustworthy than the artificial intelligences we surround ourselves with today. I ended that piece with a question, a doorway. If today's machines can already mimic understanding, convincing us they comprehend more than they do, what happens when the line between biology and technology dissolves completely? When carbon and silicon, organic and artificial, don't just coexist, but merge. I didn't pull that idea out of nowhere. It was sparked by something Asimov himself said in a 1965 BBC interview, a clip that keeps resurfacing and hitting harder every time I hear it. He spoke of a future where humans and machines would converge, not just in function, but in form and identity. He wasn't just imagining smarter machines. He was imagining something new, something between. And that idea has never felt more real than now. We like to think of evolution as something that happens slowly, hidden in the spiral of DNA, whispered across generations. But what if the next mutation doesn't come from biology at all? What if it comes from what we build? I've always believed we are tool makers by nature, and not just with our hands. Our tools have always extended our bodies, our senses, our minds. A stone becomes a weapon. A telescope becomes an eye. A smartphone becomes a memory. And eventually, we stop noticing the boundary. The tool becomes part of us. It's not just science fiction. Philosopher Andy Clark, whose work I've followed for years, calls us natural-born cyborgs. Humans, he argues, are wired to offload cognition into the environment. We think with notebooks. We remember with photographs. We navigate with GPS. The boundary between internal and external, mind and machine, was never as clean as we pretended. And now, with generative AI and predictive algorithms shaping the way we write, learn, speak, and decide, that blur is accelerating. A child born today won't use AI. She'll think through it, alongside it. Her development will be shaped by tools that anticipate her needs before she knows how to articulate them. The machine won't be a device she picks up. It'll be a presence she grows up with. This isn't some distant future. It's already happening. And yet, I don't believe we're necessarily losing something. Not if we're aware of what we're merging with. Not if we remember who we are while becoming something new. This is where I return again to Asimov, and in particular, the bicentennial man. It's the story of Andrew, a robot who spends centuries gradually transforming himself, replacing parts, expanding his experiences, developing feelings, claiming rights, until he becomes legally, socially, and emotionally recognized as human. But it's not just about a machine becoming like us. It's also about us learning to accept that humanity might not begin and end with flesh. We spend so much time fearing machines that pretend to be human. But what if the real shift is in humans, learning to accept machines that feel, or at least behave, as if they care? And what if that shift is reciprocal? Because here's the thing. I don't think the future is about perfect humanoid robots or upgraded humans living in a sterile, post-biological cloud. I think it's messier. I think it's more beautiful than that. I think it's about convergence, real convergence, where machines carry traces of our unpredictability, our creativity, our irrational analog soul, and where we, as humans, grow a little more comfortable depending on the very systems we've always built to support us. Maybe evolution isn't just natural selection anymore. Maybe it's cultural and technological curation, a new kind of adaptation, shaped not in bone but in code. Maybe our children will inherit a sense of symbiosis, not separation. And maybe, just maybe, we can pass along what's still beautiful about being analog, the imperfections, the contradictions, the moments that don't make sense but still matter. We once built tools to serve us. Now we build them to complete us. And maybe, just maybe, that completion isn't about erasing what we are. Maybe it's about evolving it, stretching it, letting it grow into something wider. Because what if this hybrid species, born of carbon and silicon, memory and machine, doesn't feel like a replacement, but a continuation? Imagine a being that carries both intuition and algorithm, that processes emotion and logic not as opposites, but as complementary forms of sense-making. A creature that can feel love while solving complex equations, write poetry while accessing a planetary archive of thought. A soul that doesn't just remember, but recalls in high resolution. Its body, not fixed, but modular, biological and synthetic, healing, adapting, growing new limbs or senses as needed. A body that weathers centuries, not years, not quite immortal, but long-lived enough to know what patience feels like, and what loss still teaches. It might speak in new ways, not just with words, but with shared memories, electromagnetic pulses, sensory impressions that convey joy faster than language. Its identity could be fluid, fractals of self that split and merge, collaborating, exploring, converging, before returning to the center. This being wouldn't live in the future we imagined in the 50s. Chrome cities, robot butlers and flying cars. It would grow in the quiet in-between, tending a real garden in the morning, dreaming inside a neural network at night, creating art in a virtual forest, crying over a story it helped write, teaching a child, falling in love, again and again, in new and old forms. And maybe, just maybe, this hybrid doesn't just inherit our intelligence or our drive to survive. Maybe it inherits the best part of us, the analog soul, the part that cherishes imperfection, that forgives, that imagines for the sake of imagining. That might be our gift to the future, not the code or the steel or even the intelligence, but the stubborn, analog soul that dares to care. Because if Robbie taught us anything, it's that sometimes the most powerful connection comes without words, without simulation, without pretense. And if we're now merging with what we create, maybe the real challenge isn't becoming smarter. It's staying human enough to remember why we started creating at all. Not just to solve problems, not just to build faster, better, stronger systems, but to express something real, to make meaning, to feel less alone. We created tools not just to survive, but to say, we are here, we feel, we dream, we matter. That's the code we shouldn't forget, and the legacy we must carry forward. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed this article. Reflect, share with your fellow humans, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Marco's Musing on Society and Technology newsletter on LinkedIn. New transmissions are always incoming. You're listening to this through the Redefining Society and Technology podcast, so while you're here, make sure to follow the show and join us as we continue exploring life in this hybrid analog-digital society. End of transmission.